So we are talking about energetic projections. Naturally, this topic of conversation does have a little bit of a psycho-spiritual flair, but there's also a very energetic core to it. While you might hear a lot of speaking about projection in, say, psychological or even self-help kind of topics, this is not necessarily focused around that per se, but we are speaking about the energetics behind just about any projections or any energy that's being projected. So essentially what's happening when energy is projected, it's like this. It's being from within to outside. And there's a lot of ways that of course people can use this to their advantage, but there are also ways, which I will discuss today, where the energetic projection isn't particularly helpful. But there are also, of course, ways to make some of these work for you. For example, timeline projection. I will get back to that a little bit later. We're going to start with person-to-person projection, because this happens the most often, I would say. Most often, we project things, energies, things on the other people. This can be, I would say one of the most common and easy to understand examples is the evil eye. So the evil eye, essentially, you don't need to do like a hex or a curse to do an evil eye. It can simply happen as a result of jealousy, unprocessed jealousy. So if someone's like really jealous of another person, or they're making all kinds of different assumptions, they're projecting essentially their internal world on that other person, projecting a lot of this emotional energy at that other person, perhaps even their thought, things that they experience. So a lot of that energy kind of gets charged up towards that other person. And so for whatever reason, this other person has sort of sparked something within them to feel that way. As a result, if they aren't fully self-aware of what's going on within them, what's really happening, and they're not really processing and dealing with those emotions, becoming more aware of these negative thoughts that they have towards this other person, this can then be projected as energy and sort of like an evil eye effect on the other person. Now in some cases it doesn't go that far. It can just be that these energies get projected. Perhaps the other person feels it or they don't. Either way, the energy is moving towards that person. And like in the worst case scenario, it might even become this evil eye effect. So it might cause almost like this psychic attack. We can feel these energies as psychic attacks. So that's one example of energy being projected from person to person. There's of course all of these other ways, so assumptions can cause this. We might project some kind of assumptions on the other people. We might assume things about their lifestyle, we might assume things about their beliefs, their philosophies, their even something like gender. That's a very typical assumption of us humans. We tend to do that. I try to catch myself in the way I assume that because I'm very queer, so I'm very much aware of how that can impact people, especially if I just go with my assumption and then I start to use certain words to describe that person. It's just something to be aware of, but as these assumptions come up, the key is to become aware of them so that we are not letting those assumptions run the show. And it's going to be important to always be more curious and ask more questions, because these assumptions can also create just these really weird energies. I know from just my own experience as a highly energetically sensitive and empathic person, sometimes when I feel people assume things not just about my gender, but like other stuff. It's even weirder when it's about other stuff, actually. I can sort of feel this really weird energy, and I can't quite put my finger on it. And when it sort of comes to my awareness that it's actually this assumption that this other person has towards me about my life, about things that go on in my world, then I kind of just understand, oh, alright, it was just what they assumed of me that was the problem, but it's still weird. And then I just sort of like cleared the energy that they projected and move on. Because sometimes it's just that there's this assumption but there's no conversation, and you sort of wonder if that's even a thing you want to do. Like in some cases the conversation is necessary, if it's like a sort of close relationship, if it's like a relationship that's really meaningful. But then there's also, of course, cases when it's just strangers, and it's not always necessary. There's some of the projections that happen between person to person. And then, of course, there's this more psychological, this is where we go more into that psychospiritual realm of projecting roles. So when people project these different kinds of roles onto one another. So say somebody goes to their workplace, they go to their 9 to 5, and they find that their boss reminds them of their parental figure, so then they start to project that role onto them. It's almost like they start to demand that role of them. So this can also cause some weird energetics when people kind of project those roles onto others. Again, based on assumptions, based on their past. That can also happen. We might project things based on our past. So we may have had a past experience with a certain kind of a person, so then we kind of project all of that into this new person. And then, of course, something that's very common in this kind of work that I do, and probably a lot of you do who watch my videos, a lot of people tend to project certain roles onto us. So for example, the savior complex, so a person might have a savior complex themselves, or somebody might project that some of us who makes these kind of videos, or some of us starseeds, that they are saviors or something, which is really disempowering. We shouldn't be projecting that onto anyone. So just so you know, that actually takes a lot of power from ourselves. If we treat other people as saviors, or project this role of like, you must be the one to save humanity, like, that's so much pressure to put on somebody else. Oh my goodness. There's also this one thing that can happen when we really want something. When we really, let's say we wanna find a perfect relationship with, first of all, perfect relationships don't exist. So if any one of you is looking for that, just get over your illusion, because that's not going to happen. And I have words to speak about this because like I go on a lot of dates, and I try to usually have this idea, I'm going to do my best to not project my desires on the other person, and I want to meet the other person as much themselves as they are. But sometimes people really want something. They have this very specific idea in their head what it's supposed to be. So they forget to see the person as who they really are. They're just like, I want this, so I'm going to try to find it in you. I'm going to force myself to find it in you without seeing you as who you are, as who you really are. That can also happen with these projections. There can be a lot of these expectations happening, and that can also cause some weird dynamics, really weird dynamics that, you know, shouldn't be there. One more thing that I did want to speak about is projecting need. Need and this, I would say to some extent even desire, but it depends really a lot on the context. So like I just spoke about, like a relationship situation, irregardless of like our sexual needs and whatever. I mean, of course those can be felt as well. Like, yeah, they can. But I noticed I myself, I've changed, you know, my whole way of dealing with it. Like, I'm not so uncomfortable with it as I used to be. It's really interesting. But when we speak about like needs, so if someone's like, right, because we do have like certain needs as humans, but this is a little bit different, okay? If someone's like really needy, they're unable to make their own needs met in something, they perhaps want some specific person to do something for them, to be a certain way. It's almost like they're praying to that person. It's almost like they want that person so badly to do something. That can come off as this really sort of draining and needy energy. Like this draining energy, it can also happen from say, when somebody really, say, wants to manifest a specific person, for example. That's like one of those things that's actually really damaging. It can be really harmful to this specific person involved, because essentially this person is projecting a lot of this very needing and draining energy. They can even end up like creating cords onto other people, and therefore this energy can end up actually harming the people involved. Instead of understanding where they can meet their own needs, and instead of understanding where they are sovereign, and instead of being enough self-sufficient, now I am not saying that we shouldn't have people in our lives to support us. This is different. And the reason why this is different is because there should be some level of us caring for ourselves. We should be able to take care of ourselves to a certain extent and not be 100% fully dependent on other people. There's a balance. It's called interdependence. That's where the balance is. We understand where we can accept support from other people, where we can walk hand in hand with people, where we can lean on others, trust others. Trust is an important part of a human connection. But we also know that there is no one single person in this life for us to fulfill all of our needs. Trying to do that with other people would be very unhealthy. There's a bit of a fine line that can be crossed with this, because on one hand, we do have these needs that we have to meet somehow. But on the other, we can end up causing damage to someone else if we are leaning too heavily onto them, if we aren't able to take care of ourselves, if we're trying to dominate the other person. This is the key, right? Because a lot of the times this neediness, please, I want you to do this, please do this for me, I pray you to do this for me. It's almost like you're trying to control the other person's behavior and you're trying to take their energy, essentially. And that's kind of where these challenging dynamics can happen, and we can end up projecting cords onto others. We can end up projecting this really harmful and draining energy. Now what I was speaking about earlier, finally, because we got this really challenging stuff out of the way, timeline projection. Okay, this is also what I see a lot, actually, and it's not as sci-fi as it sounds, unfortunately. This is where, but it can be, actually, it can be. But a lot of times when it happens is that when people project an outcome to a situation before it has even happened, it's like catastrophizing. This is like projecting negative outcomes. So somebody say, let's just say someone goes to a work interview and they're already like projecting stuff before the interview happens. So there's like, it's not gonna work out, it's not gonna happen, this is not going to go well. They're projecting outcomes into this timeline. They're projecting outcomes into what hasn't even happened yet. And I find that in this kind of situation, it's going to really be really important to be present. And it's going to be really important to have a deeper connection with your higher self, with all of your aspects, and to really understand what the highest potential of each situation is. So you can always be aware of the worst case scenario. Look, it's not going to damage you if you are aware of the worst case scenario, but also remember the best case scenario. What's the best opportunity? What's the best outcome the situation has for me? And how can I project a better outcome? Again, without being too attached to it, without being clinging onto it, but more so understanding it as an expanding, evolving timeline, okay? So you come from the present and you see, how can this expand sort of around my energy field? How can it be, how can it grow from its point of conception? And how can I allow this experience, this timeline, to unfold in a way that's actually supporting of me, so that regardless of what happens as the outcome of, say, in this example, this work interview, I can still use it as a method of growth. Even if the worst case scenario happens, what kind of an attitude can I have in order for it to support me further? So that's just like some practical advice for projecting higher outcomes, for projecting different results, and for understanding where you perhaps are projecting a negative outcome. Another very typical example that just comes across all the time in my social media feed with my friends, with just a lot of people, is this belief that the right romantic partner doesn't exist. And part of this is because what I spoke earlier is people want the perfect person. That's one distortion that's going to stop that from happening. The thing is, even just somebody who's suitable for you, somebody who's like really good for you, somebody who is ideal even if they aren't perfect. So a lot of times when people believe that such a person or people, because again, there are people who date multiple people, including me, And everybody knows what's going on, by the way. A lot of times, especially for spiritual people, we might project this idea that, okay, there's not enough spiritual people in this world for us to find this ideal person or this person who would be a really good fit for us. But then when you look around, there is more than 600 subscribers to this YouTube channel. That means there's... I don't think I can say this. That means I know at least 600 spiritual people. Well, I don't know all of you, and I don't want to make this like parasocial or anything, but like, that's already saying something, that I have contact with like 600, more than 600 spiritual people on this YouTube channel. If we aren't there to make ourselves visible to these people who might be actually very spiritual, then they're not gonna find us. It is this distortion that we believe that something doesn't exist. When the universe is infinite, anything can be conceived of the center of the infinite spark of all creation. It can create anything. It can be the spawn point of anything, really. When we fall into this distortion that something doesn't exist, we have already failed our manifestation right there. We have already failed the attraction process. We have already blocked ourselves from receiving what we're really looking for. And it's kind of like, it's just alchemy, really. It's not like the universe is punishing us or anything. It's just alchemy. The universe just saying, like, because you're saying this doesn't exist, the universe is like, so it is. It doesn't exist to you. So you're not going to find it unless you open yourself up to the possibility. The entire process of finding it is a lesson. It's a learning experience. It's something that you have to see yourself through. And expecting the universe to be like a microwave is not going to help you. It's going to challenge you. And I'm not saying this as a way to just be like, okay, everything's supposed to be a challenge and everything's supposed to be hard. No. But there are things we are learning along the way with just about anyone we meet. Whether it's platonic, whether it's romantic, whether it's sexual, erotic, whether it's something completely different, we are learning all the time. And you can, in fact, project a higher outcome. That's something to remember, but always, always, always be willing to learn. And don't try to micromanage the universe. Just do your best with allowing things to be expansive, instead of just clinging into something overly specific. And if you have different experience, like if you manage to manifest something very specific, let me know in the comments below. And again, we're speaking about manifestation as an alchemical process, not necessarily the law of attraction kind of stuff. I mean, even though there is truth to that, but there's so many other laws in the universe. It's a lot bigger of a topic than I could include in this video, even though I've already included quite a lot. The last kind of energetic projection that I want to speak about in this video is astral projection, and just any kind of a projection where we are using our own energy vessel to project ourselves into different places, into different spaces. So this is something, of course, would require a tutorial, and this isn't necessarily something that I have done that much. But this is a thing that people do. Sometimes if we see certain people's faces, this could be because they're astral projecting. I did actually have this one really weird experience about 10 years ago. This is when I would say I was going through my second spiritual awakening, but this was towards my starseed awakening. I was 17 years old when I first woke up. And then about 10 years ago, when I was 20 to 21, I went through my starseed awakening. So I realized that I was a starseed. One thing I remember happening was I was just laying in my bed, and I don't remember what I was doing, if I was like laying on my spike mat or if I was listening to some meditation music, if I was getting like hypnosis meditation or something. I lived in a very small apartment. It wasn't much smaller than the one I currently live in. It was like 22 square meters or something. It was really small. I'm in this small yellow painted room, and I mean, it was really boring, like almost like beige yellow. It wasn't even a bright yellow. In the middle of the night, the lights are turned off, and I look towards my door, and I see this figure that reminds me a lot of my neighbor for whatever fucking reason. It's just that there's this person who kind of looks like a neighbor that I've seen in the stairways, and I get really confused. This happens maybe for a few seconds, I see them, and then they're gone. This is something where I remember telling some of my friends, and they were kind of speaking, it's possible that you're having a hallucination, but it could also be astral projection. And I remember at the time, I had a really hard time taking the astral projection thing seriously. Just because I am a child of two nurses, so there's been quite a heavy, I would say, programming towards this kind of stuff, but also it's not even just that, because then I've also, just as a family unit, we have had weird experiences. We have had things go missing and just hearing weird noises in the house and stuff. So it isn't just that, it's also like cultural. It's also because like I dealt with a lot of illness back in the day, and even before that, when I was a teenager, I went to like psychotherapy and stuff. So then I had like this time frame when I was really more leaning towards the science. So I had a little bit of a hard time taking this astral projection explanation seriously, just because of my beliefs in regards to like science and stuff. These days I think these things are not like exclusionary. I think the science can be real, but also I do believe there is a side to this life that is beyond what science can explain, and I know this from my own experience as well, from just experiencing all of these energies that I've spoken about today. And now I think, you know, it is actually very much possible that this person was astral projecting, probably accidentally though. And it is possible also that I didn't have very good protection back in the day. So it isn't probably until I actually did a protection spell which would have protected my energy field and my space a little bit better. And that would have happened like fairly soon after that, because I do remember I got this spell for protection from one of my witchy friends from the States back in the day when it was still possible to receive stuff from the United States. This is so absurd. I'm very much grateful to you, Maddie, if you are watching this. Thank you so much. It would not have been that long after that when I burned this candle, this protection candle. But this is like it can definitely happen accidentally. Sometimes people might even project like visions or things. Like sometimes people try to project things through their third eye. And this, I know this used to be like a manifestation technique when people would do that. But that might actually just end up things getting into other people's energy field, like visions and stuff. But it isn't necessarily the best way to make spiritual contact with people. It's a much better way to contact them through the heart space, through the higher self. Again, ask for permission. I don't think anyone really likes other people just bumping things into their third eye stuff. I don't think that's really something that people want, like they will feel a bit intrusive. And it can also be felt, right? Like if someone's trying to project something in their third eye, you most likely will feel it as like some sense of pressure. But there's also a possibility that sometimes people might try to stop people from seeing things, and that can also be felt in the third eye. If you have any more questions, drop a comment below. I will do my best to answer it. And again, I don't have a guide on how to do astral projection because honestly I haven't done it that much. I've probably only been doing it like some astral traveling in my sleep, but I haven't necessarily done like astral projection where I've left my body and just went into the astral realm. Just not necessarily how I like to work. I personally much prefer embodiment. I prefer embodying the light, and I find that to be much more effective in my spiritual goals. Anyway, and we all have different spiritual goals, so if you wanna do stuff, I have nothing against it. Like, that's your thing. If I'm gonna be honest, it would be really cool to be a bilocating bisexual. That would be really cool. So yeah, if anyone knows how to fucking do that, then just teach me. Anyway, I will see you guys in the next video, and yeah, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and if it was helpful, share it with others, and I will see you in the next one. Subscribe for more amazing content.